All right, what's up, everyone? I got Jordan with me. We're going to talk some draft prospects. We're going to be talking a little bit of second, third round today because obviously we've all been knocked over the head with quarterback talk and all that good stuff. I'm going to get Jordan in here on the live, and then we'll get this thing going. But of course, I will have to get Jordan's opinion on the field situation. Of course, we have to get that figured out, or at least discuss that, because I would like to know Jordan's opinion on it. But I got to get him in here on this live first, and then we'll get it rocking. And if you guys are on Instagram, we're doing this on YouTube as well. I'll put the situation here. We're going to pull up some tape, do all that good stuff. So, but of course, we give you an opportunity to watch on both platforms. So thank you guys for bearing with us. I hope the internet's working now. The internet, man, it's hit or miss. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. So we'll get Jordan in here. Appreciate you guys kicking it with us. Fields at 3, or we riot? Well, we're gonna have to find out. Obviously, with the news that came out today, changes things a bit. So, Jordan, do you see the request to join the live? Let's see what we're doing here. There we go. Let's try it again. So, interesting. What's up, Jordan? There he is. All right, let me get the volume up. All right, so everyone can hear us. We're all good. So, Jordan, obviously, big news today surrounding Justin Fields as the draft prospect, potentially being available for the 49ers at number 3. It came out that he has been diagnosed. He was diagnosed last year with epilepsy. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
I'm not a medical expert, so I'm not going to claim to be, have some insight as to, how epilepsy will affect a football player. But I will say this: the fact that we got this far into the draft process before it was even mentioned or brought up at the scale it was today, I think is pretty telling that he has been able to persevere despite having the epilepsy. From what I've seen from a few people who are medical experts, they say that it is something that can be treated fairly, I don't want to say easily, but it's not as complex. Like, it's something that can be treated with medication that's not going to be so complex and such an issue that it's going to cause a team to pass on him strictly for that, I believe. So I'm not really too concerned about it. I think it's just slow news day. We're 8 days out from the draft now. They're running out of stuff to talk about. So it's just like, oh, Justin Fields has epilepsy. Like, it doesn't matter. The dude, to me, it's unless it's something that really is going to cause issues for him, or it's it's gonna it's a safety issue where you have to worry about him having a seizure or something during a game. I don't see it really being a problem at all. And again, that's why they have medical professionals to go through all these guys' charts, all their medical history, and all that stuff. So I don't see it being an issue at all. I just think it really boils down to it being a slow news day and they had nothing to talk about.
Yeah, it sounds like we're having some technical difficulties. Not sure. I think it's a combination of terrible internet connection, and I think your mic might not be connected.
Is it on? 1 second. Hold on.
It's just technical difficulties are.
This is why StreamYard needs to just get Instagram on the.
I know. Why can't we go straight to Instagram, man?
So is it the YouTube that they can't hear? Because I got
No, it's the Instagram is seeming to be the one that's giving us fit. So I think what I'm going to do is let's kick back over to YouTube. I'm just going to bring down Instagram. It's just not working properly. So if you guys are on Instagram and you guys want to listen to the conversation, just head over to YouTube. I'm just bringing it down. Whatever reason, Instagram isn't cooperating.
You look fine on the StreamYard The picture is way more blurry.
Something's going on with our Instagram feed, so we're just gonna bring it down. Head over to YouTube. That's what we'll be. All right. So now let me get my headphones set back up to connect. So hold on a second. All kinds of technical difficulties today. So let's see. Sorry, guys. Trying to get this squared away. Okay, connect, please. All right. So let's see. All right, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
All right. We're back. So let's see here. Okay. let's try that again. So basically you were saying it's hard to hear from my end, but you're basically saying it just feels like a slow news day. Is that kind of what you're getting to?
Yeah, I think it's a slow news day. They didn't really have much to talk about. And again, like, my whole thing is that, like, if it was that big of an issue, because, even I don't know if you knew today, Brett. I had no idea. And I know you've been on fields for months. I've been following for a couple of years, strictly for, I like watching college football, also for dynasty, heavy interest and all that. I haven't heard anything about him being athletic. I was actually I didn't know he was vegan. Both those things in the last 2 days, I had no clue about. And it just seems like it's both things that are getting overblown. The audio still sound bad?
Yeah, it sounds like it's interesting. It's like sounds like you're underwater almost.
How about now?
That's much better.
Much better. All right. That should be better now.
Screw the AirPods. Let's get the AirPods out of here.
No AirPods today. What a waste. Yeah. You hear me clearly now?
Yes, I think we got you.
Okay. So basically I just think it's a slow news day. Like, it's the same thing. Like, I don't know if you saw like the stupid like Chipotle bowl thing. They made a big deal out of, like, him, Lance, and Wilson all having Chipotle bowls. And it was like, oh, he's vegan. Like, I had no idea he was vegan. I don't really care if he's vegan. Like, if you can throw a football and you can throw a football accurately and you're gonna help a football team win, I don't care if you're vegan, if you're epileptic, or any of these things. Again, the epilepsy thing, only concern I have is that if it's something where it really puts him in jeopardy and it's going to be unsafe for him, because I do know that, like, you can have seizures and stuff like that. You can go unconscious randomly. If that's going to be an issue for him, I think that's something that medical professionals, that his own independent doctors and the 49ers staff can kind of work out on their own. But I had no idea he was epileptic until it came out yesterday. And again, we've been pretty, in depth on our Justin Fields research. So the fact that it was kept under wraps and it was something that clearly there wasn't an incident on the field that, where he did have one of those things happen, that would cause that discussion to come up. Again, just to me, just points to the fact that it's a slow news day. They had nothing to talk about. So I'm not worried about it at all. I feel really bad for the guy because there's very few, me, I can't stand the way that the singular part of his throwing motion where his elbow dips. It's not the entire motion. I can't stand that. But again, that's the only like negative thing that I've really been able to find. And yet there's like every day, it's like there's something new coming out about Justin Fields. And it's like at a certain point, like it just feels like they're like kicking the guy like while he's down. Like, what has Justin Fields done to deserve this like barrage of like bad press? Like he just seems like a great guy. His teammates love him. He plays hard. He plays tough. He played through the semifinal with the rib injury and all that stuff. It's like they want to drive these narratives, and none of them have been remotely close to being true. And it's just like I kind of feel for the guy because at a certain point, maybe there's some stuff we don't know. Maybe he knows he's locked into 3, hopefully, or he's locked into a certain draft spot. But it just seems ridiculous. We're not hearing anything about Mac Jones. We're not really hearing anything about Trey Lance. We definitely aren't hearing anything about Trevor Lawrence. And it's like, or Zach Wilson for that matter. It's like they picked Justin Fields to just dump on, and it's been happening day after day after day. And it's like, I'm kind of getting sick of it, truthfully. I can't imagine how he's feeling.
I can't imagine how he's feeling either. And two, like even to counter that point, like we saw what Mac Jones' sister tweeted and how grotesque that was and off-putting it was. And who knows if that was even Mac Jones or not, but I really don't feel like that got picked up. Like if that were to happen to Fields or what have you, it just feels like there's this weird slight towards Fields, and it is what it is. But for how I viewed the information, like it was brand new to me. I had no idea that he'd suffered from that. Obviously, is a bit concerning when you first hear it because, of course, you think of anything related to the NFL and the brain and potential issues that being there. It's something that you take extremely seriously. So that forced me to do a bunch of research, and really see if has there been anyone in the NFL that has suffered from epilepsy before and been successful. And sure enough, Alan Faneca is the one that I'm really holding on to because he's all-world offensive lineman. I was talking about it earlier on the show, just talking about how offensive linemen bang heads like every single day. Like I've got my helmet, like, so you can kind of see some of the battle scars that come from being an offensive lineman and banging heads every single day. So for a guy like Alan Faneca to be diagnosed at 15 with epilepsy, have a Hall of Fame career, play 13 years in the NFL. He was a first-round pick. To me, it just feels like it's just like a timing. Like, really? Like, why did this come out 8 days before the draft? So it's just one of those things. So as we, and again, I just wanted to get your feedback about that because obviously it's created up a whole another line of communication that will probably keep us going till the draft in coming up on 7 days once today is over. So that being said, let's dive into some day 2 prospects. I'm tired of talking about the quarterback at this point. I believe you are as well. So let's actually talk about some football and let's get some football takes going. So obviously the 49ers are selecting at 43 in the second round. Let's start off with this. What are some positional value that you feel fits the second round there at 43? What are some positions? And then maybe we can dive into some actual prospects that fit at that point.
Well, can I start with one that shouldn't fit because there's been way too much talk about it? They should not take a running back at 43. And I think the fact that they signed Wayne Gallman today, I'm hoping that'll kind of reinforce that. I really like Najee Harris. He's from Antioch. He's a Bay Area guy. I hope he has a fantastic NFL career. He's probably not going to be there at 43. I'm not the highest on Travis Etienne. I like Javonte Williams. There's no running back that's sitting there at 43 that I'm like, hey, I'm taking this, especially considering the fact that this is probably going to be the highest the Niners are going to pick, hopefully, for the next couple of years because they don't have the first next year. That second-round pick likely next year is probably not going to be in that 45 to 50 range. Hopefully, it's going to be in that later 50, early 60s range. So you have to maximize. You kind of, I don't say you have to hit on this pick. There's not this insane amount of pressure to hit on it, but you also kind of really need to take into account that this is the highest you will be picking for a while, and you probably should try to make it count as much as possible. So running back should be off the table. And the two positions that I'm really looking at are interior O-line because they're going to have an issue in the next couple of seasons where Alex Mack is going to be 37 next year. Daniel Brunskill is due to get paid, and maybe another team's willing to pay him more than the Niners can afford to. Laken Tomlinson's due for an extension he hasn't got yet. So interior O-line, while it's not a pressing need immediately, is a position that could be an issue even just in a short time from now, a year from now, definitely 2 years out from now. So I'd be looking at that, and then I'd also be looking at the cornerback position because they have everybody on one-year deals essentially. The hope is that the team is going to play so good that those guys are going to probably be due for big contracts. I would expect Verrett and K'Wan Williams to both have big years. Mosley does have that second year locked up, so it's not as concerning with him. But it is a position that, again, they got very lucky this past year where they had the same issue going into last offseason. They're just like, hey, we'll deal with it when we deal with it. Next season, we will see what's going on with the cornerback position. We'll see, what happens when free agency comes. We're not going to commit to any extensions. They didn't extend anybody before the season started. They didn't have any talk, or they might have had talks, but they didn't take action on any extension during the season. And they still ended up bringing back everybody in the secondary that started, with the exception of Richard Sherman, who, at this point, I'm not saying that I think he will come back, but can we really rule it out? Like, at this point, he hasn't really had the market I think he expected. So I have faith that they'll figure it out. But to me, interior line and corner are the two big ones. And then wide receiver would be the third, where I think that the case could be made for sure that the offense hasn't really needed a dynamic third wide receiver because of the way they've operated. But if you add that dynamic quarterback talent at number 3, your plans do start to change a little bit, and maybe they'll start running a little bit more 11 personnel. And, everybody loves to copy Kyle's plays. Maybe Kyle can start copying some of McVay's stuff. McVay runs some really good stuff out of 11 personnel with those 3 wide receiver sets. So I would be okay with any of those 3, truthfully. They're just – I don't see the need for tackle immediately. I wouldn't spend on a tackle there. I'm a big Mike McGlinchey believer. I think he's going to get his 5th-year option exercised, and I do believe that he will get an extension beyond that. So I don't think you need that. Obviously, Trent Williams is locked up. You're not taking a swing tackle that early. The defense, for the most part, is fine outside of that corner position. So for me, it boils down to those 3, and I don't really have a preference either way. It's just more so the prospects they would pick at a given position that I might have an issue with. But if they address any of those positions, I don't think we can get upset from a positional value. It's just a matter of who they pick there, because there are some guys that have been rumored to float in that range that I would want no parts of.
Yeah, and I think you nailed all of it on the head, basically mixing in the positional value on top of the needs that the 49ers are looking for. I think secondary is a really, really big point of emphasis, especially not only short-term, but long-term. Also, offensive line, you hit on that. I think that could also be a short-term need. We know how easy it is to get banged up in the NFL, so if one of those offensive linemen go down and you don't have someone suitable to come back and step in and play right away and be able to carry the load like we saw from a Brunskill in 2019 when we had players go out, like we saw from Garland in 2019 when Weston went down. So there's absolutely opportunities for all those areas. But let's start with the secondary, because we can cover cornerback and we can cover safety. Who are some of your guys? Let's start with cornerback. We've talked safety a decent amount, when we'll circle back, but let's talk cornerback. Who are some guys that you think could be available there at 43 if the 49ers are looking to add more cornerback help?
Elijah Molden is definitely number 1. I see the comment on the screen there. I am totally in agreement with Niners All Day 55. He's definitely one of my favorite players in the draft. And I think he gives you the option to have some kind of versatility down the line, where you could play him at safety a little bit. You could play him outside. You could play him in the slot. You could really line him up all over. Greg Newsome is another guy I really like. I know you're a huge Greg Newsome guy too. He's a guy that I worry might not be there, because I think his stock has ascended a little bit. But I think he would bring toughness, tenacity. I think he's a very cerebral player as well. And he also brings a little bit of drip with him too. That one sleeve with the hoodie poking out the back, like that was fire, dude. I'm not gonna. I saw that and I was like, okay, like this guy. And I know Croc approved too. If Croc approves of the drip, that's usually a good sign. So I like him as well. Tyson Campbell from Georgia is another guy I like. Any of those 3 guys I'd really feel comfortable with. I do think there is a lot of talent on the back end, though. I know they've been connected to St. Just for a long time out of Minnesota. And if he's a guy that's still there 10 picks or so before they pick, late 80s, early 90s, before that 3rd-round compensatory pick, he's somebody I would look into packaging one of those extra 5ths that you have to move up, just to guarantee you get your guy, because I do think that he will be there. And he's another guy that's very toolsy, 6'2", has great length. You could give him that year to kind of get seasoned and not just be thrown out into the fire and be, starting NFL corner week 1. And I think that it gives a tremendous upside should he supplant Emmanuel Mosley next season, or if Jason Verrett plays really well and ends up walking next year and ends up getting a bag from another team, you then have a guy who can step in and then has that year of seasoning, has the time to adjust to the scheme. And I think ultimately, we talk so much about how the 49ers offer whatever quarterback that they're going to draft the best landing spot because of Kyle and the offense and the weapons and all these things. I don't think we talk enough about how the defense, due to that defensive line and due to how good players like Fred Warner and Jimmy Ward are, how good of a position that the defensive players being drafted are going to be put into. Because even if they are going to see time early on, if you put a corner out there, they're going to have a little bit easier time playing on a defense that has guys like Bosa and has guys like Kinlaw and Armstead wreaking havoc on quarterbacks, forcing them to get the ball out sooner. So I think it's another situation where it's good if you can be in a spot where you're not pressured to start the guy right away. But hey, if he's lighting it up in practice and he looks like a better option than who you already have above him on the depth chart, that's a really good problem to have in a situation where you have too many good players and you have to just figure out which ones are going to get time and which ones aren't. And there's a lot of teams that don't have that luxury and they have a lot of bad players that they're worrying about giving time to. So I would be very ecstatic with any of those three. And I just think that if you're going to wait, St. Juice is a nice target to get. I do like both the Oregon corners as well, I'll say real quick. Either of them I'd be happy with. That's a day 3, late day 2 thing for me, though.
Right.
I don't see them going in that where that compensatory pick is in the 3rd. But if they get them early on day 3, I would be really happy with that. But there's a lot of really good cornerback talent in this class, so I don't think that you need to force it at 43. If it's Molden or Newsome, I'd be ecstatic. Those are the 2 guys that I really would like sprint to the podium with the draft card. Anybody else, I'm kind of indifferent about it, to be honest. Yeah,
absolutely. If Newsome is available at 43, some GM needs to be fired. He needs to be a first-round guy. He has all the skill set to be able to do so. Some guys that I like, I'm a big Ifitu Melifanu guy. I really like his size and the ability that he brings and able to move. However, I do kind of feel he would be better suited in more of a zone structured type defense. The thing with Ifitu and the 49ers is I don't know what the scheme is going to look like. I don't know if we are going to be doing more of that traditional 2019 zone, a lot of cover 3, cover 4, or are we going to see more of the 2020 situation where we were running a lot more man, we were blitzing more, doing those kinds of things. I feel like Ifitu would be fantastic in zone. He has the really great ability to tackle, be physical, do all those kinds of things. And the size that he brings with him, I believe he's 6'3", 6'2", 212. I got to see him at the Senior Bowl. Seeing him at the Senior Bowl is really helpful for my evaluation to be able to kind of put my eggs in his basket to be like, because I scouted his brother, Obi Melifanu, as well, and I really did not care for Obi's game too much. So I was a little bit biased going into Ifitu. But Ifitu showed me quite a bit at the Senior Bowl that he has the traits to be able to translate and work well at the next level, whether at cornerback, whether at safety. So he's someone I really like. Paulson Adebo, I don't necessarily like him. I think he shows some traits and some skills. He seems like a day 3 guy. He even showed me on tape in a couple instances where they played him at like will linebacker in some cases, and he did pretty well in that situation, which kind of surprised me a little bit. So maybe he even has some safety, in his future. You got the burner. Eric Stokes out of Georgia, he will probably be available around, pick 2. I don't know if he slides to the 3rd round, but there is a prospect that there's a lot of hype around. There's a lot of hype around Asante Samuel Jr. So, and that's the thing. There's so much hype about him, but it's funny when you turn on the tape and you don't see it, right? So tell me about what you've seen just from watching Asante Samuel Jr., because he is being like touted as this great potential target for the 49ers at pick 43.
Yeah, my whole thing with Asante Samuel is that I think I said it last time I was on with you, was that if his name was not Asante Samuel Jr., I don't think he'd be getting anywhere near as much love as he's getting. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Asante Samuel Jr. at all. It's just more so like when I watch the dude play, I think so much of his game relies on like instincts, I have a strong feeling that he's very good at watching tape. He's very good at studying his opponents, because there's a lot of times where he's beating guys to their routes, and before they're even coming out of their breaks, it seems like he knows where they're going. So I'm never going to knock a guy for not working hard, like that. Like, that's what's going to make you a success, generally speaking. However, I do think that there's a tremendous concern about his size, and I think that there's a lot of inconsistency there. And again, my whole thing is that if his name wasn't Asante Samuel Jr., because everybody remembers Asante Samuel, he's a great corner for the Eagles and the Patriots, very good player. I just think that there's a little bit of like inherent nepotism almost, where it's like, oh, it's Asante Samuel Jr.'s kid. Of course he's going to be good. And I'm just not seeing it. And it's more so that the hype made it worse. Like, I wouldn't be this down on Asante Samuel if it wasn't being like force fed. And there's a lot of people, and those of you out there know who you are, that are just banging the table for Asante Samuel Jr., which is great. That's cool. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. It's just making it much harder for me to understand why. Like, I've tried to hear from people like what they see in him, what they really like, and I'm not hearing anything or seeing anything that's really making me understand why so many people have him so high on their boards. I know, like, I'm a big PFF guy. I like hearing what they have to say. I like the analytics-driven stuff and the data. They've been talking about him as like a pick in the mid-20s, and that's where I'm just like, you guys are crazy. There is no way I would touch him. And, like, 43, maybe you could justify it, because maybe, at this point I've talked about how the slot position is kind of starting position now. You're playing nickel defense is basically base defense for a lot of NFL teams. So if you're seeing a role where he could play slot corner and he's going to be there for 4 to 5 years, maybe hopefully he gets that second contract, you have a guy that's just going to be solid and hold down that position, I could understand it. I would like more upside personally if it was up to me. But again, it's this undersized part, and it's the fact that so much of his game relies on instinct. And I just think that at the NFL level, you can study your opponents to no end, but if the guy's bigger and more physical than you, like, think about if he's lined up against DK Metcalf. Like, he has 6 inches on him, 5 inches on him, and it could probably 50 pounds, 60 pounds. What is the guy going to do? It doesn't matter if you study his habits and you know where he's breaking, you know this and that. Like, I can't understand why anybody would want to take that risk when you're going to have to play guys like Metcalf and Hopkins repeatedly in this division. So, again, nothing against Asante Samuel Jr. I just look at him more as like a late third round, like a fourth. If he was like a third or fourth round pick, I'd be ecstatic. It'd be a solid pick. You bank on the upside and the instinctual type playing. Talking about a first round pick or a top 50 pick, I just am not seeing anything remotely close to that personally. And hey, I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. He could come out and end up being a dominant corner and I look like an idiot, but I'm not seeing it personally. So it's a mixture of all of those things peppered in.
Right. So my headphones cut out while you're talking, so I actually didn't hear anything you said, but I think I understand where you're coming from, because we've obviously talked about this before, so we have a similar thought process. Same thing. Watch the tape, and this was even before the hype really picked up within the last month. I watched it before. The name was always there. He was always on my list, Asante Samuel Jr. Of course, the name just pops at you. You know the name. It has the cachet. So it had just been nagging at me. And so I finally took the time, jumped into the tape, watched 4 games multiple times to just really, again, when you have outside circumstances that can, impede into your evaluation because of other people's opinions or other perceptions, you just have to try and watch it with a clean slate as much as possible. So with Asante Samuel Jr., I tried to do that, and it was just a situation where I came away and was like, he leaves a lot to be desired. I think the athletic profile is there. I think you see the traits, but the execution is what really was hard for me to swallow. And a lot of that too, what comes along with that was also just the aggressiveness. He didn't seem like an ultra aggressive player. So it was just a situation where, and since that point, the hype has seemingly just shot through the roof. So it is what it is. It happens all the time. But
what do you think about my take about the name? Do you think of his name, if he was just some random guy that wasn't Asante Samuel Jr., like, would he be getting this level of hype? Like, that has to be part of this, right?
Yeah, I think it really, because like I said, like, I knew I needed to get to his tape because of his name. I knew I needed to go look at Asante Samuel Jr. because of who his dad is and how good his dad is and what his dad did in the NFL. And I knew I needed to get to that tape because that's partially what I was expecting. And so when I went into it, I tried to remove that. I'm like, all right, this isn't Asante Senior. Like, let's try to look at this as objectively as possible and just watch the player. Get rid of the jersey, get rid of the logo, just watch the player. And, you know, I wasn't impressed. I wasn't impressed. I try again, and you go in with a certain level of expectation with those types of prospects. You try to remove it, but you go in with some level of expectation. And when they don't meet it, it just, you know, I don't know if it sours the eval at all or what have you. But like I said, when I looked at it, he wasn't hyped up at all like this. So it was just, I just knew going into it, the name value that he had, and just, again, didn't see it. There wasn't anything on tape that I saw. A perfect example was a play that he had against Amari Rodgers, a wide receiver that I really like out of Clemson, who's coming into this class. It was a simple slant route. It was a simple slant. He was playing press man. Footwork was terrible. He was all out of whack. Got beat off the line extremely easily. Could have been a simple 8-yard gain. He just sloppily goes and punches the ball, doesn't wrap up, doesn't tackle, turns into a 50-yard touchdown. Of course, a lot of that has to do with Amari Rodgers and his talent. But you could see just in that one play, the lack of technique, the lack of effort and aggressiveness. And you're just like, oh. And you kept seeing it. You kept seeing it. You kept seeing it. One-offs happen all the time. And that's part of the scouting process that's really hard, is being able to decipher what is the norm and what are the outliers. Because you can have fantastic plays on tape, and those actually are the outliers. That the poor tape is actually who that player really is. So it's hard to sometimes associate the consistency versus the outliers. And so with him, just the good plays were more of the outliers than the actual consistency of being a good cornerback, in my opinion.
I'm 100% with you. I'm so in on Elijah Molden that it's like not even the question if they're both there. It's like they're like the gap is humongous for me. It's not like oh, I could go one way or the other. It's like, no, it's Molden by a mile and a half. Like, it's no question about it. So I'm hoping that he is still there. I have a feeling he's going to climb up boards and he's going to get taken a lot sooner. So we'll see how it is.
Let's kick over to safety real quick. I saw this comment.
Yeah.
Have you had much opportunity to watch Andre Cisco at all out of Syracuse?
I have. I haven't gone through as much as I would like, but I've gone through enough that I have a pretty firm opinion at this point. I think that he is a very good player. I think the only issue I have is that I've noticed he's in the wrong spot, it seems like a lot of times. And I've noticed an issue a little bit with the angle to ball carriers. And that's one thing for me that I was a big Tarvarius Moore guy. I still am deep down. I will literally not give up on a player until the team does. So I'm still a Tarvarius Moore guy. I hope he can figure it out. But that's one of his biggest issues, in my opinion, is that he can't consistently take good angles to the ball carrier. And he's consistently taking these angles, especially in the run game, where guys are able to break free and what should be a fairly routine tackle ends up breaking into a huge gain. When he's on, I do like Andre Cisco. I think that he has potential. He has a great name, too. Like, Andre Cisco just sounds like a football guy name. So there's a lot to like about him, but I am a little bit concerned about the inconsistencies that I've seen in the tape that I've watched. And I've heard from a few people whose opinions I hold very dear to I hold in very high regard. They've said the same thing and they've echoed kind of the same sentiment. And I wasn't just, because that's one of the reasons I like running stuff by you. There's times where I see stuff and maybe it's just like, no, I think you're overanalyzing, or you're tripping a little bit, you're missing something. But I've confirmed from a few people, no, like, I've seen the same things. Again, that's a guy, if you take with that third round pick or you take on day 3 with one of those early 4s or 5s, not too big of an issue with it. Definitely not somebody I would even remotely consider at 43, though.
So that's This is a rare conversation because I don't think we have talked about Cisco. So this is me hearing your opinion about Cisco for the first time. Andre Cisco, again, safety out of Syracuse, is a guy who's been picking up steam. The hype train he's got some believers. I believe PFF even they did like some like superlative thing or whatever, and he was the rangiest safety in this class according to PFF. So he's been gaining a little steam. I was told by someone a while back, hey, go look at Andre Cisco. He's legit. He's really good. He's my favorite safety in this class. Go take a look at him. And I was like, okay. So I went and took a look. And I love, again, we're having an organic conversation. I had no idea what your thoughts were on this. Same thing. I saw the same exact things. Same exact things. Like, you see the profile. You see the athleticism. You see some of that ball hawking nature, but you see him out of position a lot. You see him in the angles he takes. Like, so that's funny that you say that, because clearly we're seeing the same thing. With Cisco, that's what I saw. I just saw him, again, you pull up his highlight, looks great. He's all over the place, making INTs, looks really good from an athletic standpoint and all that kind of stuff. But when you start piecing the whole puzzle together, you're kind of like, ooh, maybe not. Maybe not so much. He gives me Jabril Peppers vibes. And I wasn't a huge Jabril Peppers guy, to be perfectly honest. I still feel to this day he should play offense and shouldn't have played defense. But that's beside the point. He has that same type of athletic profile, it feels like, very exciting from the safety position. PFF called him almost like the best sideline to sideline safety that there is, because of his speed and his athletic ability that he possesses. Again, you get him in the right system, you get him with the right coach who can maybe build on top of that foundation, he could become a really, really solid player in the NFL. But I think at this point, Cisco, at least to me, again, I agree. I think he's a third-round pick. I don't think he's second round. I don't think he's in play at 43. I would much rather go get a Richie Grant. I think Richie Grant is night and day better than Andre Cisco. So that's just, and they're pretty evenly ranked on some boards, but it's night and day to me, like a whole round's difference in regards to those two. So Cisco is a hot name. He does show flashes, and I think that's what's intriguing. But the whole story kind of leaves a little bit to be desired. We're both big Trayvon Moehrig guys. You're the one who put me on Moehrig. Moehrig is going to be a special player. He could play cornerback. He could play safety. He could play nickel linebacker, I'm convinced, at this point. Well, what are your thoughts on Trayvon? I just want to let you wax poetic a little bit on your guy.
He's just really good at football. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I try not to overcomplicate my own football evaluations. I'm not an NFL personnel person. I'm not a scout. I'm not somebody that's getting, paid to do this. So I try to remind myself that sometimes the best thing that I could do to form my own opinions is to keep it really simple. And as you and I have talked, there's certain discussions we've had where it's just like, hey, this guy's really good at football, or hey, this guy just doesn't look very good. Trayvon Moehrig is one of those guys where I remember I was like, hey, we had some time. Brad and I were doing, a chat like this on video, just, off air. And we were watching, and it was a game against Oklahoma, which is the best team in the Big 12, best offense by far in the Big 12. And Moehrig was all over the place in the run game, in the pass game, locking dudes up in the slot, dropping back in single high. He did everything. And he not only did everything, he did it so effortlessly. And one thing that I really like doing is when I watch tape with Brad, he'll bring an insight to something that maybe I haven't seen. He'll mention some stuff, having played the game at a high level, that I probably would miss since I have not. And a couple of the big things that stood out to me was there was a play where he over pursued. The ball carrier still was brought down, and he got up, and he immediately, you could see him kind of barking at himself, and he was getting on himself, made the play. It wasn't even like he missed the tackle, made the play, but could have made a better play. And immediately the body language he was fired up, and he was like, "Hey, bring it again. I'm going to get another guy." I love the Jordan McShay comments too. I have to say he better watch out. ESPN's going to come calling pretty soon.
Let me get one. Look, watch out, McShay.
You better watch out, Todd.
Talk. You better watch out.
Man. But so he's very good, and it's that, and then it's the instinct. So one thing that I really do like is that you can tell he knows his own strengths and he knows his own weaknesses. There were times where it looked like he was beat, and he knew that he had the closing speed to get to the receiver before the ball arrived, and he did it with frequency. And there was times where he might not have been where the coach asked him to be pre-snap, but it was because he knew that he could get back to the spot he needed to be in the right amount of time. And he seems like a player that plays with a certain kind of swagger and a certain confidence, but doesn't do it in a way that's detrimental. He's damn good, and he knows it, but it's not in an overbearing way that would cause you to, kind of like, he's not cocky about it from what I've seen. I think he's going to be a late teens, high 20s pick. Washington football team and Chicago are the two teams that I think could get his value and get his they can maximize the value there, because I don't think that you're going to take a safety really much higher than that, but they both have a pressing need for it, and I'd be shocked if he fell beyond Tennessee. I think they're picking 23rd or 22nd. But yeah, he's one of my favorite players in this draft. I think he's clear-cut the best safety in this draft, and it's not just that he's a safety, it's that I think he could play anywhere in the defensive backfield, and that's kind of how I'm looking at a lot of these guys coming out from college now. Is not just pigeonholing them as a corner, slot corner, strong safety, free safety. He can do everything, and he's like I said at the beginning, he's just really good at football. And ultimately, sometimes we can talk for hours about what we really like about a guy or what we don't like. The fact that he is that good and is aware of how good he is something that I really like, because there are certain professions, like, I try to be as humble as possible in my, goings through life, and you don't want a guy that's going to be overbearingly cocky. But you kind of want a guy that's going to, walk with a certain, extra pep in his step, and going to have that little bit of.
Look at him on the screen. He's got some swag to him.
He's got some drip to him, dude. Yeah.
7, like, ooh.
And that's just and he can wear that number now in the NFL too.
He can. 6'2", 200 plus. I mean, all the things that you mentioned. When we watched and we geeked out watching Trayvon Moehrig, dude's just a stud. I mean, he's gonna come up and tackle you. He's gonna be, I think his coverage, and you might have talked about it. My headphones cut out again. But the hips don't lie, right? Just like Shakira said, the hips don't lie. And when you're a DB, I think the hips is arguably one of the most important traits, or I don't know if it's a trait, but being able to have strong ability to have good flexibility in your hips to allow you, because again, wide receivers are trying to twist you up all the time. What did I do? Wide receivers are trying to twist you up all the time. I did something, I know it.
Was it the hip? It might have been the hips don't lie.
Oh, the hips don't lie. That was it. That was a good one. So with Trayvon, man, he has the ability, just like the subtleness to be able to break down. Like, that is just pure athletic ability. Just watch him. He's coming, the quick stutter, breakdown, and then is able to wrap up, get the tackle. Trayvon Moehrig is a stud.
Brett nailed it too in the comments. Brett, like, he definitely has that. He has this just ability that you can't, like, I can't quantify it. Like, I just look at him and he's just good. Like, there's so many little things that do go into it, obviously, but it's like this, and like this thing that I can't put a tangible label on, but it's just, I watch so much of his tape, and it's like I'm waiting for there to be this like big red flag or big thing that I take an issue with, and it just never comes up. And he just has this quality that can't really be quantified. And I just simplified it. He's just really good at football. And I think in the day and age that we're in now in the modern NFL, with how much teams throw, having a safety like that can just roam the field and can do all these different things, that's a tremendous value. I know some people aren't really high on taking a safety that high, but I think that, and I'm not comparing them to these players, I'm just saying, like, you look at guys like Minka Fitzpatrick and Derwin James, who were picked fairly early in the first round in recent years. They make a huge, like when Minka came to the Steelers last year, Niners fans will remember the first game he played in was that great game where they had the comeback, Pettis got the game-winning touchdown, all that stuff. But the beginning of that game was kind of, that was the Fitzpatrick show. He came in, making plays all over the field. Pittsburgh had a good defense. He elevated them to a great defense. And I think that we get so caught up in trying to get a great edge rusher, or now, with like guys like Devin White and Fred Warner and Darius Leonard, like the Mike linebacker. But having a really dominant safety can change everything. And I'm not comparing him to guys like this, but I'm just saying, like, there was a time when Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu and some of these guys really were the heartbeat of a defense. And when I look at Marg, he looks like a guy that not only complements a defense, but I could build a defense around him for the next decade or so. And that, to me, is why I would feel great taking him fairly early.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's really, honestly, that good. And the people are enjoying the trip, Jordan. I think you're onto something. I think you just got to keep
coming.
People
thought I was joking, dude. I'm coming for Todd McShay's job, dude. I got the cufflinks in. I got
Dude, Todd's looking old these days, so ESPN's going to come calling soon. So keep it up. People are loving it. So, but with Trevon Moehrig, like, we're both big Azeez Ojulari guys. Another guy that you put me onto. We're both big Azeez Ojulari guys. I think I would take Trevon Moehrig over Azeez and feel pretty confident about that. I just think Moehrig offers so much versatility. He plays safety. He plays safety for TCU. I swear to you, he could be one of the best cornerbacks in this class if that's what he was coming out as. I really do. I mean, you look at the traits, you look at the ability, you look at everything that he brings to the table, and honestly, like, he's special. He's a special player. He's the one that should be getting hyped up. I just don't understand why he's not getting the hype. And everyone's hyping up our good Francisco, but not Moehrig. But it is what it is. So we've covered. We basically just stayed on the back end today. It actually worked out pretty well based on who we were talking about. Do you want to talk about maybe one more position group around 2, or maybe let's stick with, since we've stuck around second round before, let's do this. Let's kick back to the third round. So let's kick back to the third round, and I'll ask, it's basically the same question I asked you on the front end with the second round. Positional value, team needs, how do you seeing it stacking up around pick 100?
Well, I think that's where you can start to get a little bit more. I think you take a little bit more liberty with that pick and not really be pigeonholed into maximizing the value. So you can kind of, I'm not saying you could take a running back there, because again, like, running backs, just I don't want any parts in them early. But there's a guy I really like who I think will definitely be there, who I guess you could technically say is a running back, in Demetric Felton from UCLA. But I also think Felton is an offensive weapon more so than a traditional running back. He can do the job of a running back, but he's going to be able to line up as a slot receiver. I think he could return kicks. I think that he could do a lot of the jet sweeps, fly sweeps, motions, a lot of the things that Kyle's incorporated into his offense, and also be a very dependable third down back, and just the shiftiness that he has, and the footwork, the quick in cuts, the vision. He has a lot of stuff about him that I really like. I think now, especially knowing that Jordan Reed, congratulations to Jordan Reed on a great career. I know we unfortunately didn't get to see a lot of the highs of it, but he was a great player, phenomenal player for a long time. There is a little bit bigger of a hole with that tight end 2 spot. I'm a big Ross Dwelley guy, but I definitely think that you could definitely add a little bit more diversified skill set. I think Dwelley has great hands. I just don't think that he's a great athlete. I don't think that he's going to, be a big yak guy. So Brevin Jordan's a guy that I really like if he's there. Tight end out of Miami. I think he's somebody that would
move tight end that would bring a little bit different versatility to that room that we already have, right?
And I think he's somebody that you could kind of exactly, you'd be moving around. You'd line him up in the slot a lot. You could line him up out wide. You could have him do a lot of things that really nobody there's doing, or if you're leaving Kittle in line, where I believe he's at his best and most dynamic, you then have some options to toy around with it. I like Jalen Darden too. I know a lot of people are high on him. I think that's a spot where you could really get creative with the receiver position. Jalen Darden out of North Texas. The competition thing does get brought up a lot, but my whole thing when I watch guys that play at smaller schools or play at schools that aren't as heralded, if you're going to play a lesser competition, you need to dominate them. And every time that I watched Jalen Darden play, he was by far the best player on the field on both sides of the ball, and it wasn't really even close. It was apparent how good he was. So I'd feel great with him. I think he's another guy that would thrive in a yak-based system where Kyle's going to get him in space. I really like Tylan Wallace. If Tylan Wallace is somehow still there, I would love to grab him. I think he has not been getting talked about nearly enough. Wide receiver out of Oklahoma State. Really like what he can do. I don't think he would be pigeonholed as a slot receiver per se, but I think that he could definitely play there. And I think then you can move Debo in the slot a little bit. You can move Ayuk in the slot. You can move those guys all over the place. I really like Kendrick Green too. That's Brad's guy, 100%. Brad put me on Kendrick Green, and it's funny. I'm seeing Kendrick Green getting mocked to the Niners left and right when I'm on Twitter. All of a sudden, all these
Look
people.
At that! What is that on the screen? What is that?
On cue, by the way, we did not
on
plan.
cue, not planned. So real quick, while you talk about him, I'll point him out so people, if they're unaware, Kendrick Green, left guard for Syracuse. Number 53, get your eyes on him. He's right here. We'll have it playing while Jordan's talking about him. So go ahead, Jordan.
Well, I mean, if it's okay with you, I'll just say real quick, his run blocking grade has been phenomenal. His run blocking ability is phenomenal. He's got good feet, and I think that he has the athletic ability to get to the second level. But I don't want to just reverse it back to you. But I honestly would like to hear your opinion on it because you are the former O-lineman. You're the guy that I go to for all of my offensive line questions and thoughts and musings. So if it's okay with you, I think you should take the floor on this one, truthfully.
I mean, I will gladly take the floor here. Kendrick Green is absolutely one of my guys. Jordan talked about it. Kendrick Green is a former defensive lineman. One of the things about offensive linemen is we're typically happy-go-lucky guys. We're jolly. We like to have fun. We're not going to cause too many problems. None of that stuff. Kendrick Green is a defensive lineman who converted to O-line. If you know anything about defensive linemen, they're nasty. They get after it. They're junkyard dogs. So when you can convert one of those guys to the offensive line, you get the best of both worlds. You get the physicality and you get the mentality. And that's what Kendrick Green is. He's just a dog. And you mentioned him getting to second level. So here's a perfect example of him doing exactly that. So he's right here if you see my mouse. And you're going to watch him be able to stick out his right arm. So see, he gets his right arm on the defensive tackle. That's going to allow his center to take over the block. That is crucial in being able to get to the second level as an offensive lineman. So as you see right there, they make the switch off, and he's already got his hat, and the guy squared up, and then he just finishes it. Boom. Yes, we love it. But Kendrick Green, I think honestly, he just took a little spill there. We'll forget we saw that. But with Kendrick Green, I think he slots into kind of that third round mold. I'm hoping his stock doesn't drop into the second round. I think Quinn might be gone by this particular pick, just based on the hype that he's been getting and teams seemingly really like him. But I think Kendrick Green could be available in the third round. And this is a guy who, big Daniel Brunskill guy. But with the nastiness that he shows, I think he could bring great competition to the right guard spot. He played 3 games at center for the Illini. So he's just a guy. He's just a dog. He really has great footwork. Everything that I see from him can translate. Like you can see right here, this is a reach step. You can just see how this is an outside shade reach step. So these are one of the harder blocks for offensive linemen. I mean, look at how far this guy is shaded outside of the center, almost inside of the guard. And you see him just be able to get around that and hook it without a problem. So he's a guy that I really could see fitting into the zone scheme really easily, because I think the zone scheme is a lot easier for offensive linemen. And look at that, just looking for work after the play. We talked about being the junkyard dog, always just looking for someone to hit. But Kendrick Green is honestly a guy that he could fit really, really nice for the 49ers. You see there him getting to second level, working the combo to a linebacker. It's just easy. Creates huge hole. He's a guy that obviously I really, really like and could see being a really good fit for the 49ers, especially in the third round. I like him a lot.
Yeah, and I think it makes too much sense. I think you'll be there on the board, and the fit is too good, and that's one of those things that's the most crushing part of doing draft evaluation, is that those picks that always seem to make the most sense and logic is just sound across the board, they almost never end up happening. That always gets me. But there's times when it's like, and there's no knock on the tape. It's just, and again, this is where teams have different evaluations of players. Everybody values players differently. But this is one where it's like, I really want it to happen, and I'm going to be genuinely bummed if he's on the board and they don't take him, because it happens every year, unfortunately. And that's what happens, when you're watching 300 guys, you're going to find that you're going to have a draft crush on a decent amount of them, and it's going to be crushing when they're on the board and your team opts to go somewhere else. I'm not here to question the 49ers front office. They took a roster that was pretty much empty, and they turned it into a Super Bowl team within 3 years. So I think that they definitely deserve the benefit of the doubt. But John, Adam, Kyle, if you guys are listening, Kendrick Green, I don't know what there is to not like, unless there's a guy that you really like. If he's on the board that you're going to take over him, it just makes too much sense. And again, he could play, like Brad was saying, he could play center, he could play guard. I'm sure if you asked him to, he would play tackle even. Like the guy just is somebody that I would want on my team. It's a situation where, again, you're not pressed to put him in a starting role right away. He'd have time to learn the protections. He'd have time to get familiar with the verbiage and the offense, acclimate to the NFL level. And it makes so much sense, which is why I'm really trying not to get my hopes up, because, again, that's one of those ones where it's going to leave me sitting there bummed. And then I feel bad for not being excited about whoever does get drafted there, because I'm so heartbroken in my own world that they didn't take the player that I thought made a bunch of sense and would end up being a really good player.
Yeah, and with Kendrick, it will be really interesting to see what happens, because the 49ers, we've talked about this before, they've only selected 3 offensive linemen in John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan's tenure, and one of them was a lateral move to get McGlinchey so they could move off of Trent Brown. So it's been something that being an offensive lineman and valuing offensive line, especially interior offensive line, has something that, me and Kyle haven't seen eye to eye on quite yet. So I'm not getting my hopes up here. Another guy that I really liked, I think it was 2018 draft, Biadaz. I always mess up his name. Out of Wisconsin, is going to be starting offensive lineman for the Cowboys. He was right there in the third round when the 49ers opted to take Deebo Samuel in the second, Jalen Hurd in the third. So the first 2 picks were perfect, Bosa and Deebo. And then I was like, all right, let's get the O lineman. Let's get Badaz or whatever his name is. And it would have been like such a seamless transition. But they did not go that route. They went with another wide receiver who unfortunately just dealt with injuries. And we don't know, in those types of situations, what could occur there. But is there any other players for you kind of in that third round range that kind of jump out as being available? Doesn't have to be offensive line, could be other positions, things of that nature that jump out of you or jump out at you, or a guy that you want to talk about?
I mean, we talked about St. Juice earlier. St. Juice is another guy I think that definitely fits, who could be there. One thing I don't think that gets talked about enough is that if I'm sitting there as the Niners, because Brad's probably over 1,000 at this point. I've probably done 500 mocks, maybe 550 or something in the past 2 months. I really like the trading back option, because the Niners pick again at 117. And I think that there's a lot of guys that would still be there at 117 that I would be fine taking at 102. And if you can flip that third to if somebody jumps up and there's a guy they really like, because not every other team is going to have that small gap of 15 picks, I would start looking into parlaying that. Like if you could trade that third for a second next year, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if you could do that, I would do it in a heartbeat without thinking twice. Unless there's a guy there that you really are compelled to take, I would rather take whoever would remain on the board at 117 and start getting some future picks next year. And I would do the same thing in round 2. If you could move back into the second this year, like if a team was willing to jump up from 55, 52 up to 43, and they're going to give you that pick plus a second next year, you got to start stockpiling picks for the future. Because while we're all going to be elated and excited, except for the people that aren't into Mayo Mac if he's the pick. When they take the quarterback at 3, we're going to be on this, euphoric streak. We're all going to be happy, and the Niners are going to win, Super Bowls over and over for the next few years. But ultimately what's going to happen is that we're going to get to a point where the team's drafted so many good players, they're not going to be able to pay everybody. And you're going to need to have some kind of ammunition to keep replenishing the team. So as much as there are guys I really like, I think that's a strategy that hasn't really been talked about enough because, teams trade back every year. It's not, this isn't, I'm not reinventing the wheel here by saying they should trade back. But I think that the trade back should be in mind. Like, I would trade that compensatory pick for a 2023 second round pick, not a second next year, but a pick 2 years out from now. Because again, you don't have that first for the next the next 2 seasons, 2022, 2023. And if you could have 2 seconds, yeah, you're not going to get a blue chip player. Probably you're not going to get a guy who would be there in the first, but it still carries tremendous value. If you can stockpile picks between the top 75 to 100, but definitely within the top 75. Your odds of hitting on those picks are just so much higher. And that's the thing is that there's late round, a bunch of teams missed on George Kittle, a bunch of teams missed on Tom Brady. But generally, NFL front offices are really good. And while they all will have different boards, generally it's the same 75 to 100 players in that top 100. It's just the order that changes. And if you can get yourself in a position where you're going to have more chances to swing at some guys in that range, it's going to alleviate the loss of not having a pick in the top 32 for the next 2 seasons beyond this. So I would start looking at adding capital again. Again, the ideal thing is you add it for the next draft, but I'd be okay waiting a year and getting it. So then when 2023 rolls around, it's like, oh, hey, remember that trade we made on draft day when we didn't have a guy that we really liked at 102, or there was a guy at 43 we felt we could move back and still get it 55 or whatever. And then you have those picks on top of it. That's ultimately how you build a winning roster. And like that pick the Niners made with Chicago when they duped him into thinking they would take Trubisky, that turned into Fred Warner a year later. And if you're able to, I'm not saying that every time you trade back, you're going to get a Fred Warner type player, but those kind of moves in the moment may not seem like a huge deal, but they end up really changing the entire direction of a franchise if you stockpile those picks and you end up hitting on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's even an opportunity for the 49ers to use that draft pick and maybe even trade up, because we've done a lot of talking about trading that 43, maybe jumping back. Who knows? Maybe they target someone around pick 75 that they really, really like, and they want to get up and move up to go grab someone. So there is a possibility to take that pick 100 and even go up as well. But I do like the trade back scenario where you're, again, just continuing to stack assets, continuing to build up and build for the future, because honestly, that's what the draft is, right? At the end of the day, we're building for the future. Jordan Kuiper out here spitting bars per usual. But this spot at pick 3 is again another opportunity where, hey, do the 49ers go running back around 3? Who knows? Wayne Gallman was just signed today. We haven't talked about that at all yet, but I personally like the Wayne Gallman pick. I'm a Clemson guy. I got a thing for Clemson dudes. No, I'm going to pause on that one. But I really like what Wayne Gallman provides for the 49ers from his basically one-cut style. He has ability to basically read the hole and shoot through it. I think Gallman has the ability to be actually a pretty damn serviceable running back for the 49ers, especially within the scheme that he'll be playing in. What are your thoughts on Gallman, the Gallman addition that was added today?
Yeah, I think that he stepped in very admirably for Saquon last year. I think that he's a guy that can come in and immediately help out the running back room. I think he's no stranger to the fact that his chances of maybe inking a deal somewhere else after next season are going to be substantially better when you're running in a scheme that turned and this is no disrespect for Raheem Mostert because he worked very hard to get to this level, but a guy that kind of bounced around from team to team, was a special teamer, practice squad type player. All of a sudden he's averaging 6.5 yards a carry. I think that there is definitely a symbiotic relationship where the player still needs to have some level of talent. But Kyle Shanahan, Bobby Turner, Mike McDaniel, these guys are going to boost your value at that position so much higher than any other team in the NFL. There's a lot of guys that are running, Matt LaFleur is running the same system. McVay is running a very similar system. Arthur Smith in Atlanta. I forget the guy who took over for him in Tennessee, that Tennessee is still running it. Nobody is going to put you in a better position to succeed as a running back than Mike McDaniel, Kyle, and Bobby. And I think that Gallman is acutely aware of that, and I think they have a specific role for him in mind bringing him in. The only thing that really bums me out is, if they're signing former Giants running backs, I think that there's one who's, as far as I know, still on the market that they should go and get, and that's Orleans Darkwa, just for the Darkwa Duck memes, because that was one of my favorite times for a while. But remember that in Dynasty? Orleans Darkwa was the future.
Oh, yeah, dude, I remember that. I would, of course, remember that.
I don't know why, but when Gallman got signed, that was the first thing that I thought of. I was like, man, it would have been great if it was Orleans Darkwa. But, hey, at the same time, nothing against Wayne Gallman. Wayne Gallman's a great player. And I think
that's just more for your fantasy teams than anything else.
Exactly. It's just more. I like to be entertained, and that's why, I'm just throwing it out there. The first thing I care about is the success of the team. I want the 49ers to be good. I want to watch a good product. I want to be entertained watching them play. But I also like to joke around and have a good time. So it's just fair warning to anybody who follows me on Twitter or anything like that. Like Mac Jones is getting picked at 3. Don't be surprised at all when I'm going off on Twitter. And I'm not going to be pissed and breaking furniture and smashing my team. I'm going to be laughing.
We're going to meme through it. That's how it's going to work.
That's how I deal with the pain, exactly. Is I'm going to sit there and I'm going to just be sarcastic and kind of work my way through it. But the content is going to be incredible. If a guy named McCorkle Jones is somebody that you traded 3 first-round picks for, man, it's going to be it's going to be a wild ride regardless. But
absolutely, it's going to be a wild ride. But as independent content creators, it is a win-win situation. It is a win-win situation. Obviously, as fans, might not be a win-win situation, but as content creators who want to talk about the position, yeah, it's a win-win for us. We'll meme through it. We'll figure out a way to get through it. And then all it's going to take is McCorkle Jones to throw his first touchdown pass for us to forget the entire offseason talk and all that good stuff. But, it's a win-win for us either way because we're going to have something to talk about. So even though I know most people don't want to hear that. Some other guys around, pick 3 or round 3 could be a good spot for wide receiver if the 49ers are looking to upgrade there. You mentioned Jalen Darden, Tylan Wallace, and guys like that. Maybe a Dwayne Eskridge. Amari Rogers kind of falls into that situation. I like Cade Johnson a lot. Cade Johnson out of South Dakota State. He was a guy that was at the Senior Bowl. Actually got to chop it up with him a little bit. I actually dropped my ear pod onto the field, and he handed it to me while we were chatting. But he just seemed like a really humble dude. Obviously, we talked about it. He had no offers coming out of college. He went to South Dakota State and turned in a pretty good career there, and then came out to the Senior Bowl and played really well. He had one of the plays of the week, was a one-handed grab for a touchdown. I talked about this before. I was sitting in the scout section. I was completely misplaced. I should have been over on the media side, but I was with the scouts and all the team officials, and they didn't make a sound the entire week of practice. And then when Kay Johnson made that one-handed catch, you just heard all the woo-woo, just the hooting and hollering from the football guys, because at the end of the day, those are the football guys. And when they see a football play that is like a legit play, it's just hard not to, it's hard to contain your excitement sometimes. But there could be guys, and the list goes on and on of other guys available potentially at the 3rd, 4th, 5th round range. So wide receiver could be a position of interest. Maybe this is where a Divine Diablo enters the conversation. If you are looking for that kind of hybrid safety, big nickel role, a guy like Divine Diablo could come in and play multiple roles for you. Nasir Adderley is, a rangier corner or safety who potentially could be available around that range as well. Caden Stearns could be available as well out of Texas. There's some guys that do offer some value, but they're honestly, the 49ers have set themselves up, and I think they're setting themselves up in positions where they need depth. Wide receiver or running back, they needed depth. They just addressed that today. Edge, they needed depth. They just addressed that today. They've been poking around at safety, which is another position of depth that they need. I think the 49ers are honestly trying to set themselves up going into the draft with literally zero perceived needs to be able to allow them to be as fluid as possible. You talked about trade up, trade back scenarios and things like that. I think that offers them that flexibility to do so. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if more players get signed. Again, Tony Jefferson was brought in earlier. This weekend, I believe, is when that news dropped. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see.
See the question of Michael Carter. I just wanted to say real quick. I really like Michael Carter. I think North Carolina's skill position groups: Daz Newsome, De'Ami Brown, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams. Like for a basketball school, like what Mac Brown has been able to do there for a school that's always been, again, a basketball school and a conference that's been more tailored towards college basketball. Not as much football. Clemson, obviously, Florida State have always been really good. Virginia Tech's been pretty good, but what Mac Brown's doing there it's pretty special in my opinion. I know they got routed pretty bad by Texas A&M in that bowl game, but they have some impressive skill position players. I think that Michael Carter, the biggest thing for me is his feet. He has great footwork. The way that he's able to change direction and the way that he works in between the tackles and hitting those holes on the outside zone and a lot of that stuff that they're running there. I really like him. I just don't think he will be there. I think that somebody's going to take him earlier because I see a player. I think that him and Javonte Williams are both very good players that bring a little different skill set for each guy. I know Brad saw him in Mobile when he was at the Senior Bowl, but he's a guy, when I watch the tape, the feet is the thing that stands out to me. I think he has better footwork than any other running back in this class. The guy he reminds me a lot of is Damian Harris, who came out of Alabama a couple years ago. Josh Jacobs gets picked sooner, which I think Javonte Williams will as well. But when I watched Harris doing the drills at the combine and watching the tape, his feet really stood out to me. He had great footwork, and I think that he's a guy that could carve out a role in a very similar way where he's getting passing down reps. He's kind of a supplemental back, and I think he could honestly start in the right system. I like him a lot. I just don't think that he'll be there, unfortunately. I'm not taking him at 43, and I don't think he'll be there at 102, but I think he is a great player, and whoever ends up getting him is going to be very happy.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me about seeing him at the Senior Bowl was his toughness. Again, he's not a big guy. He's really not. You look at him, amongst all these big D1 players, and he really doesn't have the size that you would really want to see in a feature back. But I think one of the things that stood out to me the most was his toughness and his ability to not go down after first hit, after first contact, when he's running in between the tackles. Clearly, he excelled outside the tackle box. He excelled as a pass catcher. He excelled in space. He excelled at all those things. But I think one of the biggest things that took me by surprise was Michael Carter's toughness between the tackles. Which gave me a solid feeling about how he projects into the NFL. I think he can be more than just a gadget back. I think he can, and you're not going to want to run him as a 3-down back because with that size, you could lend yourself to bringing on more injury and things of that nature. But based on what he showed, not only on tape, but in person at the Senior Bowl, he's going to be a legit running back. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be a great target for fantasy if you get your hands on him. He'll be a super late round gem that you could get your hands on. Really, yeah, I agree. I think he's someone that could find success in the NFL, especially if he lands in the right spot. Another guy that I like that we haven't really talked much about because he fits in between, I think, 43 and 100. I really like Amon St. Ra, wide receiver out of USC, or Amon-Ra St. Brown. Completely butchered his name. I really like him out of USC. I like him a lot. I like what he brings to the table. I feel like he is one of these types of wide receivers who can literally do it all. Whether it's coming across the middle, running up the seam, running deep fades or whatever you need from him from a route runner standpoint, catching standpoint, whatever, toughness, short, intermediate, deep. He can handle it all, and he just seems like a competitor. Obviously, we know who his brother is, Equanius St. Brown, wide receiver for Green Bay Packers. So they've been battling it out since kids. He's clearly the smaller of the two siblings, but Amon-Ra St. Brown to me is a gamer.
Wasn't the dad like a body? Sorry, but wasn't the dad like a bodybuilder or something crazy too? He's like an Olympic athlete or something. There was something.
I don't know about his dad, but that wouldn't surprise me at all. Having the multiple children that he has, and their athletic ability that they bring to the table. He seems like a guy that Kyle Shanahan would like because you can do so many different things. He can play X, Y, and Z. He can play out of the slot. He can play out wide. He can do it. He can run the entire route tree. It doesn't matter. He doesn't get much hype. No, not many people talk about him. He's someone that I really like a lot. And another guy that I really like is, again, it kind of falls in a weird range. Someone mentioned it up here. I don't agree with the take. But I do like Samuel Cosmi. Samuel Cosmi first jumped on my radar as a sophomore at Texas when they played against LSU. I don't know if you watched that Texas LSU game from a couple years back. It was just a fantastic game. Of course, LSU at that time had, I believe, Joe Burrow and so many different weapons on that defense. That was when Grant Delpit was, a world beater, playing from the safety position. And Samuel Cosmi just wrecked shop from the left tackle position. He's a guy to me that can play across the entire offensive line. He can play guard. He looks like he can play center if you really needed him to. He has amazing agility for his size, being 6'7", 300 pounds. He really knows how to move, and you wouldn't even know he's 6'7". Because he moves so well for his size, and he has good pad level and all of those kinds of things. He will be able to be extremely efficient in a zone run blocking scheme because he has the movement abilities. He will be able to do combo blocks, be able to get to linebackers, safeties, all those kinds of things, and of course, pass block. He's a legitimate pass blocker, has great technique, all those kinds of things. Samuel Cosmi is a guy I really like, but he's not coming in to replace McGlinchey. No one's coming in to replace McGlinchey.
Jason, this isn't directed at Jason, first of all. This is just directed. There's a lot of people on Twitter who've been dragging Mike McGlinchey for a long time. I think Mike McGlinchey is going to make a lot of people look very bad next year because the thing is with Mike is that, he if you go back and you watch his tape, there's a clip of him against Sheldon Day, ironically enough, who was a 49er until last season. He's with the Colts now, where they're going head up at Notre Dame. Sheldon Day puts him on his ass pretty easily with just straight bull rush. Puts him on his ass. I think Mike has always been a guy that has had an issue where guys get leverage and they get below his pad level. And I think that's the thing that I notice a lot when he gets beat. It's not technique. It's not rip moves, spin moves, side steps. It's almost always just a guy getting under his pad level and leveraging him. And it's strange because he's such a large human being to get moved around that way. But it's a problem that's always been there. That's the funniest thing to me. And I get it. It's a bad year. We're all looking to point fingers at people when things go wrong. That's what ends up happening. When things are good, you really don't do that. But if you go back and you watch 2019, anybody who has Game Pass or if you have a way to watch those games, just go back and watch those games. He was literally getting beaten the exact same way, and he was getting beaten the same way in 2018, and nobody had a problem with Mike McGlinchey. And then all of a sudden last year, it was like, oh my God, Mike McGlinchey's public enemy number one. And yeah, I will concede this, that the plays that he was getting beat on did not look good. His lowlights were not good. I don't like watching highlights and don't like watching lowlights because they don't tell the whole story. But if you were someone who was only privy to those things, I could see how watching Mike McGlinchey getting put on his back here and there would make you not the biggest fan. But what this guy does in the run game is so special, and his ability to move to the second and third levels, it's incredible. Guys that big should not be able to move like that. And then when you have him and Trent doing this, that both possess that ability, it really gives Kyle and the offensive staff tremendous liberty to expand their playbook, expand their running game, and constantly change things up and constantly call these plays. If you go back to 2019, you watch a lot of those Debo sweeps. Mike was the guy out there clearing the way, 15, 20 yards beyond the line of script. Like, it's just, I feel for I hope Mike is on social media a lot, because I just think
ever since that whole situation went down, he follows me on Instagram. He used to like all my posts. Ever since that whole situation went down with the Mike McFloppy thing, he's ghost on social media.
And and I hope he comes back, and I hope that he again, he just dominates. And if he can the super simplified thing that see a lot of people say, oh, he's a good run block, he's just not good in pass protection. That's not true either. He just gets beat very bad. Like, when he loses in pass protection, he gets beat really badly, and it ends up looking worse when you're that big and you end up on your back. I can totally concede that. Mike McGlinchey is a very good tackle, and there are a lot of teams who would love to have Mike McGlinchey on their team blocking for them, which is why I believe we heard the Colts called and checked in and see if they could get him. So I just want to throw that out there, that there's this whole, I see a lot of people that are always like, well, they need to replace McGlinchey. McGlinchey's gone next year. Like, I don't think Mike McGlinchey's going anywhere, and I'd be a little bummed if he did get to go somewhere, just like Brad was probably super bummed when they got rid of Trent Brown and replaced him with Mike McGlinchey. Like, at a certain point, you want to see some continuity on the line, and I just don't think that Mike McGlinchey is anywhere near as bad as social media and just general consensus will lead you to believe, especially if you go through and you watch every single snap and you go through it, like, especially last season, watching Beathard and Mullins, a lot of the sacks that they took were ultimately on them, and then it got blamed somehow on the offensive line. I'm sure Brad can relate. There's nothing worse than being an offensive lineman that's getting blamed for things you didn't do, because it's already a pretty thankless job to begin with. You sit there, you have great protection, you keep a clean pocket, and the quarterback throws a strike. Everybody's celebrating the quarterback or the wide receiver making the play. They're in the end zone having a great time, and you're sitting there and not getting thanked for anything. But then the second the quarterback gets sacked, all of a sudden all the blame gets shifted to the O-line. So it's already a pretty tough enough job as is. So I just want to throw that out there. I don't think Mike McGlinchey is as bad as anybody. As not anybody, but like the general consensus that I see, especially on Twitter, like the McFloppy stuff and this and that. Like, it's clown behavior in my opinion. Mike McGlinchey is much better, and he deserves much better than that. So I just want to throw that out there.
I think that's very well said, and part of that issue, I think, is because we do have arguably the best left tackle in the NFL who is elite at run blocking and pass blocking. So, and after that, or before that, we had Joe Staley, who was a fantastic pass blocker as well. So I think there's a level of expectation that 49ers fans have for the tackle position. Obviously, it's the most visible in regards to the offensive line when it comes to seeing how they fare against the elite edge rushers in the NFL. And when they're put on an island, it's a show. I mean, you go back to 2019, and when it was Jadeveon Clowney versus Joe Staley, they'll show that matchup over and over and over again. So with McGlinchey, and you said it, he's the best run blocking right tackle in the NFL, but unfortunately he does leave something to be desired in the pass game, and it really comes down to technique with Mike. If Mike, his pass set isn't where it needs to be, which makes him too high in his stance, which means that defenders can get under his pads really easily. And when you're 6'7", 6'8", and you got a guy who's got really good strength and can get under your pad level and has already beaten you with leverage, it's really easy to tip you over. It becomes very easy, and that's what it looks like. And that's why it looks so egregious. It's just because his technique isn't where it needs to be. He's not in his proper depth in regards to his pass set, which would allow him to work through those situations. But because he's so high and because he doesn't have that depth in his hips, it just makes it really difficult when he's put in those situations on an island. And like you said, the the issues are amplified because they're bad beats. They look really bad, but it's hard. Again, we talked about stringing the entire picture together. You pull a couple of his bad clips, they look really bad, but when you string them together with the majority of his play, he's doing okay. He's doing more than okay, because if the run game is working and they're being able to predicate off play action, because again, that's what Kyle does with his offense. That's the reason why they moved from Trent Brown, who was becoming one of the better pass blocking tackles in the NFL, and they moved away from him for a guy who didn't come preloaded as a pass blocker. He was a run first guy from his time at Notre Dame until now, because the 49ers are predicated off running the football. So it would suit Kyle the best to get guys that fit what he's trying to do. And so when you're running the ball and then you're running play action off of that, play action is still run action for the offensive line. Offensive line are still taking their run steps. They're still operating and executing run technique. So they're not in their pass set. They're not on an island. It's not 1v1 type situations, because the run action really helps the offensive line. So what we saw last year was the offensive line getting forced out of that because they were playing from behind. They had to pass and get their way back into the game. The defenses understood that there was miscommunications occurring across the offensive line, and they took advantage. And they just blitzed the hell out of us constantly. And then, of course, on top of that, when you are losing and you are getting beat and it gets amplified, that the way it got amplified, I can 100% guarantee you that all the conversations that were had around Mike McGlinchey, he heard them and they affected him, because you guys remember the "I'm here" or "I'm still here" tweet? That was in response, because he put together 2 really good games and was basically like, "Oh, you guys are still talking crap. I'm still here. I'm still balling." And then he unfortunately took a dip again with the team. The team took a dip. He took a dip as well. And you can kind of see the flow and how those two relate to each other, because when the 49ers are running the ball and running it well, they can execute within how they've been built to set up. They are not built to just drop back and pass and throw the football. That's just not how it works. So when you have to kind of abbreviate what your game plan is to something like that because you're behind, it just puts everyone at a disadvantage, and including Mike. And unfortunately, again, his beats are just bad, and they show up very apparent on tape. But if you really break it down, it all comes down to pass set technique. It all comes down to his footwork. It all comes down to the depth in his pass set. And if he can figure that out, everything changes. It's not necessarily the weight thing. Like this is a common thing that I hear all the time. He was under 300 pounds. Good. I want my zone offensive lineman to be light and fast. That's how it should be. I don't need big maulers. Like Lakin is kind of almost like an exception to the rule, because he's a big boy, but he can move, and that's why it works. With McGlinchey, the weight isn't the issue, because I played center at 255 pounds going up against 320-pound offensive linemen, and the reason I won was because of my technique, my leverage, hand placement, explosion, first step quickness, all of those kinds of things. If you are good at that, that mitigates the other things. So his issue isn't weight. It's technique and pressing and mental capacity from being shit on, for lack of a better word, for an entire season. So the hope is, obviously, going through those struggles, those situations, he can learn how to block out the noise. Like I said, he's not on social media anymore. He used to engage on social media. He engaged with my page quite a bit. I miss you, Mike. I hope you come around, because we miss you out there, and I know that affected him. I know all that stuff affected him. So the hope is that get the technique right, get the mind right, come back, show people what you're really about.
Go own those bozos, Mike. You own them. I'll be right there under every post. Own that bozo, Mike.
Hey, so we'll be your online offensive lineman. We'll go out there and just maul all these dudes talking mess all day, and that I respect Grant and respect what he's built and all that kind of stuff. And he was a big leader of the Mike McFloppy situation. And so whenever he was tweeting something, I would counter it. It was always pro McGlinchey to his. I got outnumbered really quickly. But we're going to keep the same vibe. We're going to keep the same vibe. So because we want our guys to be successful, and it's really difficult when you can see how talk is affecting a player mentally. And I think fans, obviously we're off on a tangent now, but I think fans have a misunderstanding of how powerful their words are on social media, because these guys see it. They all see it all the time. I know for a fact that they all see it, and it affects them. So let's be better.
The whole thing is just that, people get caught up in, it's one thing to expect, if you're getting paid a certain amount of money, that you deliver a performance based on that. Like, that's totally fair to have expectations be high if a player gets paid. But to just constantly berate somebody because you don't like the way that they played, or they had a bad rep, or they allowed a sack, or they dropped a pass, like, these guys are human beings at the end of the day. And again, like, you have the people that are like, oh, they're just soft, like, they're just soft, turn off your phone or whatever. And I just think ultimately, yeah, like, that's a fair point. You can't really be harassed if you put your phone away. But that shouldn't have to get to that point, is the point that I'm trying to make, is that we as fans, and myself included, I threw a lot more, not in a bad way. I was never derogatory. I never will cross the line to where I feel like I'm being disrespectful to a human being, but very sarcastically, I took some digs at Jimmy Garoppolo last season. I haven't been a fan of his for quite a while. Honestly, not a fan. I haven't been as high on him as many were. So I took the time to make sarcastic jabs here and there. But I never said anything that was over the line or over the top that, I wouldn't say to his face, or I wouldn't say to any other human being. Because, again, there's a certain level of decency we need to have. So poke fun. If you want to joke around and make jokes and stuff, that's fine. Just, we as fans need, and again, this is myself included, we need to be better about understanding that at the end of the day, these guys are human beings. And while it's fun to have lighthearted jokes here and there, you should maintain a certain level of respect. And it would be awesome if we just collectively as a fan base could represent ourselves better. And again, I'm not telling anybody else how to talk or how to tweet or anything like that. I'm just saying it would be really nice if we reached a point where players weren't ducking social media because they're, having.
Well, as content creators, we want these guys to be interacting with us. We want them to be coming on and talking with us and giving us feedback and input and commenting and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's not in our best interest to be dragging these guys. So I think, it is what it is. Everyone's going to have their own opinion. Everyone handles the situation the way they're going to handle it. Whatever. Do you at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? You can't control what other people are going to do. And that's what you're telling to the player. Only control what you can control. At the end of the day, not everyone's going to like you. You're not going to be perfect all the time. Don't worry about it, right? But there is a level that we can come to as a fan base to be understand. We can poke fun. We can make a meme here or there. But let's be chill with it.
There's a certain there's a line that you don't cross, because I'm sure there's plenty of stuff where the players will take stuff and I know you've talked to a few. They take stuff in stride, and I'm sure they're hearing much worse things from coaches when they fuck up on the field, or they drop balls, or they do this and that. But again, just have a certain level of decency. That's the thing to me, is that I see a lot of comments that are overboard, and it's embarrassing, truthfully, because it represents us all as fans, even though it's not fair, really. But it really does kind of embody the whole fan base when it's happening at the rate that it was happening last year. Have fun, and hell yeah, dude. There's times where I get pissed. I'm like, fuck, this guy should have made this play. But at the same time, there's a reason why they're putting cleats on and they're on the field on Sundays, and why I'm on my couch tweeting about it. So I try to keep that in mind as well when I'm making these, jokes or whatever. But I know we got off on a tangent. Just glass half full. That's going to be the mood for all 20.
Glass half full.
We're supporting all these guys. We're going to support Mac Jones when he gets it. No, I'm just kidding.
That's the thing. That's the thing, is if Mac Jones is the pick, if Trey Lance is the pick, if Justin Fields is the pick,
it's going to be really hard to sell people on.
We don't have a choice, because we're just going to have to take it in stride, honestly, at the end of the day. So we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when it comes. After today, I think today was a good day for me mentally to recheck my confidence levels. So I'm kind of back on that neutral level of whatever happens. Because I was getting really confident about Justin Fields there, but I think today was a nice reminder to just take a step back and just let it play out and just let's see what happens. Because at the end of the day, 49ers are going to have a new quarterback, and we're going to want them to be successful. And we're going to want them to lead us to championships. We want to go to the Super Bowl again, and we want to win it. So, if it's Mac Jones, I'm praying for that man because his DMs are going to be wild.
And I think so. The biggest thing that, and again, everybody's going to deal with this differently. I'm just offering what's worked for me. I have, especially the weather's getting nicer, so it makes it easier too. I've been far less consumed with who the Niners are going to take at 3 and more consumed with going out. I don't know how clear it is with the lighting or the camera. I got torched in Half Moon Bay on Sunday. So I was like, hey, I'm going to go to the beach. I've gone to the beach like 4 times in the last week and a half or so because I can sit there and I'm not worried about who they're taking at 3. I'm enjoying this beautiful California weather, sitting back, having a great time. Was in Santa Cruz yesterday. It was wonderful. Didn't have to stress about it. So find little things. Like for me, it's going to the beach, maybe going somewhere, getting some good food. Find something because if you're sitting there and your whole happiness is dependent on who they're taking at 3, you might be crushed come draft day. And I still will be there with you, but I'm just at the point where I'm just trying so hard not to let it consume. Because when they first made the pick, I was like, oh, of course, it's going to be Trey Lance, it's going to be Justin Fields. And then all this Mac Jones stuff started up, and I just got this sinking feeling in my stomach where I'm like, it could be bullshit, but there could be a reason why there's so much smoke around it. Like, I know it is smoke season, but there's a lot of things that Mac Jones does really well that I think that Kyle Shanahan would really like. And I think that I'm not saying I think they take him, but I'm just saying I'm preparing myself for the possibility that happens. And I'm taking extra steps in my life outside of 49ers content and Twitter and all these things to guarantee that I am in as much of a zenful mood as I possibly can be, because I do not want to be that person that ends up like the dudes that like punch their TVs when their team loses.
Oh my!
Or if you guys have ever seen the video of the Steelers fan when they lost a couple years ago to the Jaguars, he was like, "Don't ask me to do dishes. Don't ask me to do nothing." Like I want to make sure that that's not me at all. While I'll be a little bit bummed, I don't want it to consume me. So take this time in the next week or so, focus on yourself. Do if you have a hobby, if you like playing video games,
oh yeah,
you like doing something, you like a special meal or something, treat yourself because you might be heartbroken come next Thursday. And I'm not saying I think it's going to happen. I'm not trying to speak it into existence, but we're going to all need to be there to pick each other up because it's going to be a tough pill to swallow because we ultimately won't have any real reassurance on Mac Jones if he's the pick until he ultimately plays, which at the earliest would be the preseason, which again is hard to put stock into. So realistically, until the end of August, early September is going to be the earliest that we can look at that pick and maybe start talking ourselves into, hey, maybe Kyle knows what he's doing, because it's going to be complete chaos if he gets taken. And the possibility it happens is a lot higher than I think people are giving credence to in this situation.
Yeah, and I think today's report, whether it has an effect or not, that's what that was. It was a reminder. It was a legitimate reminder that these teams have information that I do not have, and they are making evaluation off information that I'm not privy to. So, for example, they have known that Justin Fields has epilepsy, and they have known this for some time, I would imagine, based on pro days, medical checks, and all that kind of stuff, which has to be divulged at that point. So that gives a different context to a lot of the rumors that have been out there. It just gives a little bit different. It gives you a little bit extra to think about. So again, if it's Mac Jones, it will be insane. I will be getting videos sent to me of people burning jerseys, punching, like you said, punching their TVs, breaking TVs, throwing phones, doing all that kind of stuff. We're probably going to have, there's going to be a post of like people rioting outside. It's going to be intense. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. So we got to prepare ourselves for, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. It is what it is. Again, I liken it back to last year. We did the same thing with CD Lamb, same thing with the page, same concept. We do it every year. We build up certain players. That's just the vibe. That's how we roll. And it does allow you to get set up for disappointment, and we're okay with that. We understand that. And so when CD wasn't selected at pick 13 or after the trade and all that kind of stuff, dude, I felt like I got punched in the gut, and everyone got to experience it on live and do all that kind of stuff, and just watch me go from super, super happy to just like I saw a ghost. So, but that is going to prepare me a lot for this year, because the whole time I'm hyping up Justin Fields, I know in the back of my head that it very well could be Trey, and it very well could be Mac Jones. So the closer and closer that we get to the draft, and again with the news that dropped today, it's just a somber reminder that there might be information out there that we don't have, that changes certain evaluations, that changes certain rankings, changes board placement, all that kind of stuff. So we're about to be starting tomorrow. We're Colin Kaepernick days away from the draft. I feel like it's so slow. Time is moving so slow at this point, but start to prepare. Just start to prepare. Just start to mentally absorb the possibility of it being Mac Jones. And of course, there's Trey Lance people. There's a ton of Fields people. So it's easier to tell a Trey Lance person, start mentally preparing yourself for Trey Lance, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. It's basically mentally prepare yourself for the outcome that you don't want, because it happens to me. I've experienced it. This is my 10th or 11th time covering the draft. It's happened to me more often than we've hit on the picks that I want. So you just got to be prepared. And whatever happens, we'll take it in stride. And we'll try and find the positive in it. We'll dwell in the negativity for a little bit. We'll have our little pity parties and do all that kind of stuff. But that's the thing, is if they do go Mac, we will be able to talk about a lot of positive attributes of why it makes sense, like why it does. It's just, there's just that, and we don't have to go into a big crazy detail about all these quarterback prospects and what have you, but it makes sense as much as I hate to admit it, as much as my heart belongs to Justin Fields. It's true. He is more mobile in the pocket than people give him credit for. He throws more. He has better arm strength than people give him credit for. So it's going to be an interesting situation. So I think we're running up on a minute 45. We've been running about like 70, 80 people in here pretty consistently. So that's been pretty cool. So again, appreciate everyone who's been sticking around and hanging with us and listening to us talk, rant, go on all different kinds of tangents. But the draft is in 7 days. I believe Jordan and I will be doing the same thing on draft day, breaking down all the picks, first round, of course, 3, what happens at 3, reaction at 3, walking people off the ledge if that is going to be something that happens, or celebrating. It's going to be an insane night. But before we break, is there anything that you wanted to add, Jordan?
No, I appreciate everybody's in here. I saw the numbers looked good. I appreciate everybody's in here asking questions, hanging out with us. And, ultimately, hey, we're all in this together. We just want to see the Niners succeed. We know that this team is so close. And if they nail this pick at 3, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, not just in the NFC West, but in the entire NFL, hopefully for the next 5 to 10 years. Better days are coming. And regardless of how we feel about the pick on that day, just know, we're all in this together, and let's all do our part to lift one another up. Again, if it is Mac Jones or if it is a Trey Lance, or, whether you're somebody who's excited for the rookie or you're somebody who doesn't want to see Jimmy Garoppolo go and you're not ready to move on, at the end of the day, we all support the same team and we all want them to succeed. So let's do our part to pick each other up, lift each other up, not bring each other down, and not be super negative. It's going to be really hard not to be. And again, if it's Mac Jones, humor is a great tool. It's a great coping mechanism.
It is.
Try to find the humor in it, because it's going to be really funny. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of pictures of him with his beer gut hanging out or his big plate of cookies and all the other goofy shit that he does. I don't like. We'll figure it out. But I really appreciate you having me on, Brad, as always. I know next week we're going to be doing something for the draft. So if you guys want to hang out with us while the draft's going on, we'll have a lot of great stuff, a lot of good content. I can promise you that it will be. You got a very authentic reaction out of the both of us, regardless of what the pick is.
It will be entertaining regardless of the situation. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, thank you to everybody who tuned in to watch, and again, thank you to Brad for having me on. I had a great time, and just one last, coming for you, Todd.
Ooh, he brought out the cufflinks. Watch it, Todd. Dude, you're coming for him, bro. You're coming for him. I swear.
I'm just saying, I cost a fraction of the cut. You can pay the aging veteran, or you can take a guy in the 5th round who's going to be dirt cheap for a few years. ESPN, get at me. DM me on Twitter, figure it out. We'll work something out. But
get a cost-controlled rookie for at least 4 years. Build him up, sell him off for assets, do whatever you need to do. He's right there. He's right there. Come on, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. I might have to try and match your drip on draft night. If we're doing this whole drip thing, I might have to come out and see what I got. I'm not a big drip guy. I ain't going to lie. I'm a simple man, really. But if Jordan's bringing the drip, I might have to match it. So we'll see. And again, thank you for joining, Jordan, as always. The drip is immaculate, and I think we're going to keep seeing it evolve as we continue. But again, thanks to everyone we had a lot of really good comments today. A lot of good interaction from everyone. So, man, you guys are kicking ass, making this a lot easier for us we're an hour 45 in. We probably could go for another hour. A lot of that is thanks to you guys and your comments and interaction. So we appreciate it. We'll be back. What's today? Tuesday?
I think Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday? I don't even know anymore. We'll be back. We'll be talk draft and do all that good stuff. So again, thanks to everyone for watching. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Make sure you're following Jordan at _cousin on Twitter. And anything else you want to pump up before we head out?
No, just it should be a fun week. Stay tuned, subscribe to Brad's channel. We might have something between now and then too. You never know. There's new developments coming out in this last week, as you're going to start seeing a lot more stuff come out that's more compelling than Justin Fields being vegan or having epilepsy. There's going to be a lot of stories like that coming out. So maybe something huge happens. Just like and subscribe to the channel, and we're happy to break down whatever comes our way in the next week or so. I'm really excited about this.
Raymond, please don't sell your season tickets if we take Mac Jones. Please don't. And quick shout out.
What section are they in, and how much are you looking to get?
Yeah, right. So if Mac Jones is the pick, that means the value of the tickets go down, right? You get them for us for cheap, right? No, appreciate Raymond, man, dude. Raymond's been a force on YouTube ever since we made the switch. So appreciate my guy Raymond, always bringing solid comments. But that's it for us. We're out. Appreciate everyone. You'll see us again before the draft. All right, later, guys.